Back with you here on the newsfeed, and thanks for staying on. Chris Mangena has outlined inconsistencies between the police's version of events and a ballistics report. He testified at the inquiry looking into the suspended South Gauteng Director of Public Prosecutions, Andrew Chauke's fitness to hold office. Chauke is accused of unlawfully instituting charges of racketeering against the Cato Manor unit, and then the then head of the former KZN Hawks, Johan Boysen. The ballistics expert says evidence shown in the dockets reveals that the suspects were not attempting to attack the police and that officers weren't acting in self-defense. Let's listen back.
After the deceased was shot standing, he fell down, and as he was lying on the floor, the other wounds were inflicted whilst lying on the floor. The two wounds marked the one on the right chest had characteristics of a bullet entry wound. The wound at the back of the body had characteristics of exit wound. The exit wound close to the spine had characteristics of a short gunshot exit wound. Short gunshot wounds of exit is produced when the outstretched skin impaled or sandwiched and crushed between the outgoing bullet and the underlying object over the exit side.
All right, let's unpack now what happened during this week at the inquiry. I'm joined by Professor Mpho Matlala, law enforcement and crime expert from UNISA College of Law. And joining us in the studio is Nqobile Madlala, who has been following that story for us. Good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. And Prof, good to have you as well online. Nqobile, where are we in the process now, especially looking at this past week?
Well, so we are expecting that there's going to be a new witness that is going to take a stand, as in from tomorrow, from tomorrow going on forward. But what we have heard from the ballistic expert from the time when he took the stand, which was on Tuesday right straight to Friday, is that he highlighted that there were discrepancies with regards to the report that was provided by the police, as well as the report that came out of the ballistic report. Now, remember, ballistic reports tends to be very scientific in a term, because you look at what is provided in the scene. So from the blood splatters to the post-mortem results to basically what was the outcome where the person was standing and so on. So he's basically looked at those discrepancies, one of them being the fact that the police would say that they were being shot at, but when you look at the actual ballistic report, the person, like Nqobile, was actually on their knees, which shows that they were shot at a certain angle. So he's highlighted that. But further than that, what he has spoken about is that there were pattern of behavior that they could already see. Some of it being the fact that each and every scene had a gun. Mostly 4 scenes had about the same revolver, and they could not explain where this gun was coming from if you look at the scene scientifically in that eye of a person that is a ballistic reporter. But then he says that these are some of the inconsistencies that they have to look at. In some cases, they would say that the suspect was actually shooting at them, but you can see sort of blood splatters as well as the drip blood that is left behind, that they were actually hurt before that happened. In some instances, you would even have a witness. In the case of the Umlazi matter, there was actually a brother that was on the other side of the room when that happened, and he was an eyewitness, and he comes out at that time, allegedly, as they putting a gun on the suspect that was already shot. So these are some of the things that were outlined by the ballistic expert.
And how do you account for the weapon that they claim to have discovered, which is 425? Well, according to Mostert, Inspector Mostert, he saw the deceased pull a firearm. Even Warrant Officer Naidu makes the same claim that the deceased went into the room, he took a bag, and then he took a firearm, and as he was about to shoot, Inspector Mostert shot him 3 times.
Chair, by then, if you look at the wound sustained on the chest, it's a close-range shot. So he was less than a meter within when these wounds were inflicted. If he pulled out the gun, I don't think it would be able for him to pull out the gun while the person is standing in front of him. Because here we're looking at the muzzle of the firearm. We're not looking at the distance between the suspect or Warrant Officer Mostert and the so-called suspect. we are looking at the distance between the muzzle of the firearm. So possibility of a range of less than a meter between the two of them, it's there when the shot was fired. So it could have grabbed the firearm, it could have grabbed the hand that was holding the firearm.
Now, the substance of the aversion, I've put that to you twice, which is the man goes and he grabs. Is it a false account in your expert opinion?
Chair, it goes back to the modus operandi.
Yes.
That's how they operate.
Yes.
And I disagree with their version of the incident here also.
Now, this incident in question, for someone who's trying to understand what the advocate SC is trying to do now, I mean, is this incident strengthening the case for the state, or is it strengthening the case for Advocate Chauke?
Remember, the inquiry is on a fact-finding mission, Thabo, and what they're trying to figure out is basically outline all that was facts that were taking place in KZN. So the entire incident with regards to the Cato Manor unit is an incident that we're looking at 2008 to 2009. This is where the killings took place. Now, the ballistic expert was there in 2012. So we are in 2 times of these years where they were looking at the evidence in the 23 dockets that were in question with regards to the racketeering charge. Now, this is the time when they were saying that there was something and there were pattern of behavior, that there was an enterprise, that there was money that was being exchanged, all of this that was taking place, but they're investigating if indeed the Cato Manor unit as well as Major Johan Boysen are involved in all of this. But why are we questioning this? Because there was actually Advocate Andrew Chauke, who was in conversation with the then NDPP Nqobile Madlala, who then decided, or rather chose, the prosecutors that went to KZN. And the question before the inquiry is whether or not he acted in his jurisdiction, whether or not he did push for this racketeering charge, and sort of how much of the power he had over these prosecutors when they went to KZN. And so the ballistic expert is one of those people that were in KZN in 2012 investigating. And whilst he was investigating, he says he was fearing for his life. So as we put this in front of the inquiry, then the inquiry is supposed to look at how Advocate Chauke acted. Was it in line with the NPA? Was it in line with his work? And that's the question that's currently in front of the inquiry.
Prof, when you look at the sum total of the evidence so far, at least the ballistics evidence, in terms of the broader concerns that are raised in this particular matter, is there a picture that's beginning to come up for you in how this particular unit behaved?
Absolutely. And good afternoon to yourselves in the studio and to the viewers at home. To understand the systemic challenges or the culture within the Cato Manor unit, you have got to go into history and track the career path of Major General Johan Boysen himself. This is a man who was a career police officer. He joined the police sometime in the 1970s. And I would think that at that time, the National Commissioner was General Johan Kutsie. You'll recall General Johan Kutsie was implicated in the murders of Dr. Fabian Ribeiro and the wife, Florence, including the deaths of Nofomela. And also, as we progressed, then the next national commissioner would have been General Johan van der Merwe. We know how he got involved in counterintelligence and foreign intelligence, the bombing of the regime headquarters in Cambodia. So General Johan Boysen came in during that time, and he progressed through the ranks. And when he eventually became head of that organized crime unit, that organized crime became a syndicate itself, but he came from a period of apartheid, and he had this nostalgia, and he romanticized with the modus operandi of the apartheid generals, and as such, he actually posed post the apartheid, within the context of democracy, post-1994, he actually brought in this culture because he knew that the apartheid generals and the security branch got away with a lot of things. So that's the first aspect about the picture that is emerging. The second aspect in terms of the picture that is emerging, it is clear, if you look at Lieutenant Colonel Chris Mangena's methodology, he relies on ballistic reports, autopsy reports, and crime scene photographs. And he is beginning to tell us that the Cato Manor gangsters actually doctored the scene, many of the crime scenes. And the killings go as far back as I can remember the 2011 killing of some Mkhize, Siam Mkhize, and he was 17 years old, you know, and another taxi driver whose name I could not remember. Others were hanged, other suspects were hanged, others, it is claimed that they jumped out of the window. And you'll recall that Chris Mangena spoke of a firearm which was placed on top of a pool of blood, and he makes a compelling argument that the blood really would have created a pool around the firearm, because there are parts of the firearm that would have been in contact with the surface or the ground where the firearm was, which the blood would not have reached. And of course, we already know about the window story where you have Maharaj, the officer Maharaj statement, who says the shooting was when the car stopped, and this was in another Mkhize case about the window, whether it was up or down. And then there is Stoltz, who indicates that no, the window was open and they had to apply the brakes, and that's where the shooting started. That already is an inconsistency. And Chris Mangena's report shows that the window was closed. I think that was the Devon Central case, including the Mkhize in that Lexus high-speed chase. But that is the picture to say we have police officers who are in an apartheid culture, nostalgic, in love, romanticizing apartheid modus operandi, and they are doctoring the scene of crimes, and they are executing suspects who are innocent. By the way, the purpose of dealing with a suspect, one of the purposes is to really bring them to appear in court, not to put them in body bags and take them to the government mortuary. I mean, when a police officer says, this guy was attacking me with a granite and I shot him 4 times, 1 bullet right in the middle of the eyes and 3 at close range on the chest, then surely this is, we have hardcore scientific evidence that shows that we have a murderous unit on our hand that is busy doctoring the scene of crime, which, by the way, is also defeating the ends of justice.
Of revealed or leaked information, secret meetings with criminals and what the prof is raising, questionable shootings, closed windows and so on and so forth. Is Chris Mangena saying these particular patterns are inconsistent with the notion that the police were attacked first?
Basically, that's what he's highlighting, that essentially the police were not attacked first. In fact, based on these ballistic reports, it questions whether these people that were being attacked, or rather were said to have shot, that they even had a gun to start off with. He talks about residue that there was found in their hands, that the primary residue shows that there was shooting within distance, what the professor is referring to as people who even had a muzzle of the gun right on their bodies or close by. So there's a powder that sort of comes out as you shoot. And he says that that residue would show that they were actually within a certain space. So it would be at a point where maybe the car has stopped and and you're shot whilst you're standing. But the reports would say that there was a movement of the car, there was a window that was down, whilst the window, for example, is left, some of it is left on the frame of the car, which shows that the bullet went through this window. So these are some of the things that they are in question. And to talk about the money as well is what we heard from Advocate Mayema when he talked about the fact that there were meetings where there was money that was passed, and this is based on the evidence of one of the witnesses that were part of those meetings, who says he was a bodyguard, and he says this is what was taking place, and this is where the racketeering charge comes from, and this is what they used to back up the racketeering charge. But let's listen in as they explain if there's enough evidence for that charge.
Allegation against Advocate Chauke is that he supported the prosecution of the Cato Mena squad, that includes General Boyson, in circumstances where there was no evidence which justified the decision to prosecute those members.
Chair, based on my reports, I think there's enough evidence in prosecuting the members.
No, I wasn't saying whether there was or not. I was just trying to explain to you what the allegation against Advocate Chauke was, so that you understand why the questions that I will ask you stem from.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, Prof, how much weight does this ballistic evidence now put upon this particular inquiry?
The methodology in crime investigation is both qualitative and quantitative. Now, the qualitative aspects would refer to things like witness statements, eyewitnesses, and so forth. That is pretty much the qualitative aspect. Then the quantitative aspects is really objective scientific evidence that has exact measures right up to 100%. To dispute scientific evidence would really be difficult, because then you would have to attack the credibility, for example, of a ballistic report and the credibility of the ballistic expert himself. So, you know, things like the position of bullet casings, the position of firearms in relation to the scene of crime, and then, you know, the exact measures between some of the exhibits like firearms and casings and maybe the body, you know, that is hardcore scientific evidence. Right. So out of 100, I would say scientific evidence would add 90% validity, and qualitative evidence would actually add 10%.
Prof, appreciate your time. Let's leave it there because of time. Nqobile, thank you very much for coming in. Prof Matlala, crime and law enforcement expert from UNISA there, and Nqobile Madlala looking at that